He's like maybe 10 feet away. And I'm like, while we're young, like as if it had taken him so long to get here. And then he beats the out of me. So street fighting is a big thing in Quincy, to give you a sense of what it's like living in Quincy. So when I was growing up, I mean, there were scheduled fights between like teenagers, like to prove, who was tougher or whatever. And so there was always this feeling of like everyone's trying to best the other person and like everyone's trying to get the one up on somebody else. And like really physical violence was a big part of my upbringing. I mean, fighting was a part of it, like street fighting.
Whoa. So hold on. So are we talking like UFC type? Like
gnarly fights.
Who would do the scheduling?
Scheduled as in like, dude, 3:00 behind the dumpster, we're going to fight. Like that. I mean,
was it like a beef or was it?
A lot of times it was perceived beef. It was not real stuff. I think that a lot of the guys I grew up around, they wanted to prove themselves. And a way you did that was beating somebody up or getting beat up and like, sucking it up and taking it on the chin kind of thing. But so I was around people and I was a part of the scene of people that were like much more invested in, fisticuffs than schoolwork. And I think it honestly really kind of derailed my that's a large reason why I didn't do well in school is I was much more focused on being tough and like fitting in with my friends and being popular. And like, that's what mattered to me.
What age did that start?
Like 12.
12?
Like 12 years old is when you're introduced to like the roughness of Quincy.
What is your most memorable street fight?
Oh, I got the one. I have one that I told this story several times, and it gets a couple of laughs. It's pretty funny because I get anyway. I'll tell you the story. So my sophomore year of high school, I had this study period in my schedule that I just was in this classroom with random students, from every grade, and we just like sat there and did our homework or whatever for 45 minutes. And there was this girl who sat next to me who was just some girl. I mean, she was friends with my sister who was older than me, who was at school with me. She was a senior. I'm a sophomore. So she's friends with my sister, but I didn't know her too well. But I knew she was my sister's friend. And so I just sat next to her and, there was nothing going on between us whatsoever. We're not dating. We're not flirting. It's nothing. It's just we're sitting next to each other because we have this mutual connection in my sister. Well, somehow or another, it got out that I was sitting next to this girl in my study period, and it got back to her boyfriend, who was very upset about this. And instead of like coming to me and being like, why were you doing that or were you doing that? I just got a phone call from like 3 other people saying, Paul wants to fight you about what you're doing with his girlfriend. And instead of me being like, why? I was like, all right, let's do this thing. And so it got scheduled for, so we did this thing in Quincy called the Powder Puff game. And it's like girls play flag football on the day before Thanksgiving. And so our high school was North Quincy High School, and our rival high school was Quincy High School. Equal size schools, similar cultures. And the Powder Puff game, which is, again, the day before Thanksgiving, was when kids from Quincy High School and North Quincy High School also met up to fight each other. So you have this Powder Puff game, and it's a known day for all these big fights between the two rival schools. And even though Paul and I were not from rival schools, it became like the main card of this particular Powder Puff day of fights was like John and Paul are going to have this big fight over what's happening with his girlfriend. And so anyways, in the lead up to this is weeks out. This has been scheduled in like October for a Thanksgiving Day fight. And, in the lead up to it, I was so cocky about how this fight was going to go. Paul, mind you, is significantly bigger than me. He's older than me. He's the captain of the hockey team. The dude's a beast, okay?
Oh, man.
And I'm like a twig. And I'm around other guys, my friends, who are genuinely tough, who can hold their own and are like scary dudes. I was around them, but I wasn't one of them. I was kind of like the fringe guy that was like kind of part of the group. But I adopted this mentality of, I'm going to beat Paul. I'm going to beat the shit out of Paul. Like, that's what's going to happen, And so that attitude I had began to get noticed in school, and people bought it. They're like, oh, John's like hanging out with these guys. He's got to be pretty tough. Like, he's going to beat Paul up. And people began coming up to me being like, hey, dude, like, be easy on Paul. Like, we need him for the hockey team. Like, he's the star player. Don't hurt him. And I'm like, I'll try not to hurt him. So the day finally arrived. Actually, it's funny. Like in the week leading up to it, I started getting real nervous about this fight. No one knew that I was nervous, but I'm real nervous. And I remember going into my basement at my mom's house and shadow boxing like a fold up chair, getting ready for this fight. It was so dumb. So I end up on the day. I go to the field after school where this fight's going to happen, and also where the powder puff game's going on. So there's hundreds of kids here, and it's in the middle of the forest. This is an unsanctioned sporting event, so it's like this hidden place in the middle of the woods where the kids hang out. And everybody knew, like, John and Paul are going to fight. And so I get there and I roll to this place with at least 50 people in my posse. Just, yeah, you're going to kill him, John. Like, let's go. And so I'm at the field with my buddies waiting for this fight to start. And it was scheduled for like 3:30 or something. 3:30 comes around and Paul hasn't shown up. And I begin just talking Paul to anyone who will listen. Like, this guy's pathetic. He's scared of me. He's not even going to show up. This guy's a joke. And then like 30 minutes later, Paul shows up with one person with him, no posse, hops out of his car and begins walking up the hill to me. And everyone's like, oh, he's here, he's here. And I'm like getting ready, and I'm standing up on this hill looking at him as he's coming up to me. And I have this fucking line that I say. He's like, he's like maybe 10 feet away. And I'm like, while we're young, like as if it had taken him so long to get here. And then he beats the out of me. Didn't get a swing in. He had me on the ground, knocked out in like 5 seconds. Oh. And I like come to, and I'm looking around, and everyone's surrounding me like, you got knocked the f*** out. So it didn't go well. And I would say that fight, so many people were there and saw it that it became like a meme about me. Oh, we're young John. Like it was this whole horrible thing. But it humbled me in a pretty huge way. And I would say that that's when I began to think that street fighting might not be my thing. Maybe I should do something else with my life. So I'll become a Navy SEAL.
Yeah. Wow. How old were you?
16.
16?
Yeah, that was a humbling experience.
I'll bet that was a humbling experience. Did you get in any more fights after that one?
Nothing scheduled. Yeah, no, I think at that point I realized that maybe my fisticuff game was not as good as I thought it was.
I'll just defend myself from now on.
Exactly.
But, wow. Your parents are renowned journalists.
Yep.
And they're probably not used to this.
I was like such an anomaly within my family. I mean, like my family are so, by the books, if you will, like, get good grades, got good jobs, respected in their careers. And there was no reason that I wouldn't have learned to be that way as well. But instead they have this kid who's just like gone off the rails and is getting in fights and getting his ass kicked and just, breaking curfew every night and just kind of being like that troubled teenager.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I pissed my family off like mad. I was like the most insufferable teenager ever. Mostly because I just believed that I was just better than everybody and that I don't need school. I don't need any of this. Like, I'm just so cool. I can do whatever I want. It really wasn't until I actually went to college, believe it or not, that even though I barely graduated, my mom, who's an amazing writer, wrote my college essay because I wasn't doing the application. I wasn't doing anything. And just being a good mom, she's like, okay, fine, I'll write your essay because you're not going to do it. And she wrote this beautiful essay that I actually just read the other day. It's about my childhood best friend who passed away, but it's an amazing story. And so I sent it off to the school, UMass Amherst, and my grades were abysmal. I should not have gotten into the school. And the school contacted me to say, your grades are not really what we're looking for. But that essay was something else. You're in. And so I got accepted to the school on the strength of my mother's essay and immediately failed out of the school. Like immediately, I got in trouble so quickly. I was in a riot. This is in one semester. There was a riot that I was a part of.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.